Good morning, Mrs. Jawasko. How are you doing today?
Good morning. I'm doing well, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for asking. Before we get started with the conference, I'd like to let you know that there's going to be a lot of information given today, a lot of vocabulary, maybe unfamiliar to you, so if at any time you feel overwhelmed or need something clarified, then feel free to stop me if you have any questions, and I will explain it to the best of my ability. So let's get started. Today we're going to be discussing Johnny's test scores for the Iowa Test of Basic Skills, and it's an achievement test that they took back in January.
Well, what exactly is an achievement test?
Okay, an achievement test is a test that measures your child's strengths and weaknesses based on what they've learned so far this year. So their results are compared to a norm group, and this is just an average score of the students who have taken this test across the country. And these test results demonstrate what subjects your child excels in and identify some areas where he maybe needs some more work or extra help. But this is not the only measurement of your child's achievement. We have a portfolio right here for him that shows his best work throughout the year. And so we can see this test is just one little snapshot of one day of taking a test. So please keep in mind that if you have any questions, let me know. Do you have any before we get started?
No, I don't think so, but I'll let you know if I do later on.
Alright, let's get started. So there are many categories within the test scores, and I will be explaining them to you individually. So I gave you a copy of the scores to follow along. If you look at the top right corner, it gives some basic information like the student name, what grade level, which is 4th, and when they took this, which was back in January of this year.
Okay.
And the results page is divided into two categories. Norm referenced is the top, and the bottom is criterion referenced. So norm referenced scores are test scores that are compared with other students who took the same test, like what we were talking about earlier with the norm group.
Okay, so Johnny's scores are going to be compared with other students?
Exactly, so we can see how he's doing compared with other students in his level across the country. So these groups are really helpful to teachers because they can show us how our curriculum and test scores compare to others, and see it holds us accountable, and we can see what we can do to help the students better.
Okay.
So for this specific test, we can see that the norm group was compared and measured with 2,000 students from a very diverse population to make sure all cultural groups are represented. And I'm going to give you a little more thorough explanation of what these scores mean with examples. So I'll be discussing different sections of the norm reference test, which include subtests, core total, and composite scores. So this test is broken up into subtests of reading, language, and math, and social studies and science over here.
Okay.
So if you look at the box of norm referenced information, you'll see a box labeled tests right here.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at the reading subtest, for example, you can see that it includes vocabulary and reading comprehension. So did I explain that okay? I just wanted to make sure you understand the breakdown of the test so far.
Yeah, I mean, I think I understand, but could you show me the subtest for language?
Sure. The subtest according to this sheet for language would be spelling and capitalization, punctuation, and
Oh, I see right there. It says usage and expression?
yes, usage and expression.
Oh, okay, I get it.
So now that we've covered the subtest, we'll look at the core total. So for this test, the core subjects are reading, language, and math, and the core total represents the combination of those three subjects altogether.
Okay.
So now we're going to discuss percentiles. If you look under scores, you will see something labeled NPR, which stands for National Percentile Rank. So for example, if we look at Johnny's rank for math with concepts and estimation, he's in the 68th percentile.
Well, that can be good. Isn't 68 a failing grade?
No, actually not. This is where it can get a little confusing. We aren't talking about 68% out of 100. We're talking about the 68th percentile. So if you look at your bell curve right here that I gave you, you will see that the middle is 0, or 50th percentile in this case.
Okay.
And this marks the average based on the norm group we discussed earlier. So since he scored in the 60th percentile, it's not necessarily 68%, but he scored better than 68% of the students in the norm group that have taken this test. So he's above average. This is the mean or the average right here, and here's above and below. So he scored about right there, which would be 68.
So he scored better than 68% of other students.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So now we're going to look at the standard score. If you look at the bell curve again, we can measure the standard deviation. So we have what we call a standard score that includes the range from lowest to highest and the mean or the average. So for this particular test, the range is from 183 to 223 and the average is 200. So for example, in the norm referenced portion of our vocabulary for his results, we can see that he got a 200. So I'm going to show you on the bell curve, it would be, the mean would be 200, and then if you went one standard deviation below, it would be 183, and then one above would be the 223. Yes, right. 223. And so the mean would be 200. So since he scored 210, he's just above average, so he's doing very well in vocabulary.
So he's above average, but what percentile is he actually in?
He's above average, yes, and if we look at the NPR, National Percent Rank for vocabulary right here, we can see that he is in the 75th percentile, so that means he scored higher than 75% of the students in the norm group. So now we're going to move on to grade equivalent scores, and we'll look again at vocabulary. He got a 5.5 for vocabulary, so that means he scored as well as a 5th grader would 5 months into the school year.
I mean, he does have a high vocabulary, but I didn't know that he should be in a 5th grade classroom for reading.
It doesn't necessarily mean that he should be in 5th grade. It just means that he scored the same as a 5th grader who's 5 months into the school year would if they were, or how well they did score if they took this 4th grade level test. So it does, however, show he has an excellent vocabulary, so he's doing well in that subject. So next we're going to look at the Stay9 scores, which are right here. And these are scores in relation to the normal curve of the norming group. So they're reported in scores from 1 to 9. If you have a 5, that's right in the middle. So we can look on the bell curve, that's right in the middle.
Okay.
And then 1, 2, and 3 for the Stay9s are considered below average. And then 7, 8, and 9 are above average. So if you have a 4, 5, or 6, that's about right in the middle, right in the average. So for David's score, we can see he scored a 6 on the bell curve. Since the average is 5, he scored just above average for that one. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, it does.
So now we'll be looking at the bottom portion of our test results. We were doing the norm, now we're going to do the criterion. So...
well, I thought that we already covered his scores, so why are we going to go over it again?
Well, we covered the norm reference, which was comparing it to a big group, or a group of students, but now we're going to compare it to what the set score is, like the set criterion. So it just shows how much he's accomplished and what he's able to do. So this focuses more on skills and compares it to a standard score.
Okay.
And so we have 4 categories: total items, number attempted, percent correct, and the national percent correct. So is there a certain subtest you'd like to focus on?
I think I'd like to see how Johnny did in algebra.
Okay, if we look at algebra under the total items, we can see that there were 6 items for this test. He attempted or completed 6 of those questions, so he answered all of them. And then of those 6, the percent correct that he got was 83%. So he scored 83 out of 100, which is pretty good. So compared to the other students, the national percent correct was 68%. So he ranked about in the middle for algebra. Okay, now that we've finished discussing all the scores, I would like to go over a few areas where your child is excelling and a few areas that he could use some extra help. So, under reading comprehension, under inference and interpretation, you can see he scored a 93%. And also in capitalization of names and titles, he had a perfect score of 100%. He seems to really do well in this section. Then if we look at math, he scored 100 in measurement and 100 also in single-step solving probability, or problem solving. And there are some ways that, there's some areas that he could use a little more focus. In spelling, he got a 50% correct. So maybe if at home, just run over his spelling words a little bit, just help him out in the evenings before, when he's working on his homework, because that could really increase his scores.
Okay.
And also he's doing very well in history. For the social studies portion of this test, he scored 100% on that portion, so he's doing very well. So overall, we covered a lot of information today, and I'd like to show you his portfolio, and you can look at this at home if you would like. And it just shows everything that he's done this year, some of his best work. So try not to focus too much on these scores if they're not up to what you think they should be or anything, because it is just one day taking a test. A lot of the factors can go into it. Maybe he was having a hard day, maybe he just was kind of tired. I mean, everybody has those days, so It's important to just remember that he's doing really well overall. So Do you have any other questions for me?
There's a lot of information covered, but I think that you gave some pretty good examples, so I think I'm good, and thank you for taking the time to go over this with me.
Yes, thank you. If you have any other questions, just feel free to contact me.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
I
you.
will.
Have a good day.
You too.